today's instalment of our HR Leaders series, we're joined by Steve Hill, the Group Executive People and Workplace Environment at First State Super. Clearly, the current COVID-19 pandemic has had and continues to have a significant impact on organisations, large and small, across the country. And Steve has kindly agreed to share some insights into how the current crisis has impacted First State Super, as well as himself personally. So, Steve, thanks very much indeed for your time today.
Not a problem.
Now, Steve, before we get into it, would you mind just giving the audience just a little bit of an overview of First State Super as an organisation? Just a quick potted history, if you like.
First State Super is a large profit for member superannuation fund. Its origins are out of New South Wales, but through a merger in Victoria a few years ago and another one that's coming up very soon, we've grown from New South Wales and Victoria and with small presence in other states as well. We're a very large fund. We're around $100 billion of members' money, and we have about 800,000 members. And our members are predominantly from the health, education, community, emergency services sectors. So members who are absolutely at the heart of what is going on right now, and we feel very connected to what they're doing. And as a fund, we're very proud to be a fund that supports them.
So first of all, Steve, can you just tell us how COVID-19 has impacted First State Super, and how as an organisation you've responded?
Well, look, I think every organisation has been impacted, but particularly for us in our sector, there's been two main ways. One is naturally for our members, as a fund whose members are on the front line in times like this under the COVID-19 circumstances, when you're looking at health and emergency services, particularly community workers, they are fundamentally feeling what is going on within the environment every day. What we have to do as an organisation, therefore, is make sure that we're supporting them with both advice and guidance as this environment really takes hold, including in responding to the adverse market conditions that are going on, and then helping navigate those changes, particularly those who are closer to retirement and are seeing their retirement savings eroded by the market. And also in responding and navigating to some of the changes that the superannuation rules have come out from the federal government over this time, particularly with regards to early release. So there's a core focus on impacting our business in helping our members respond to this environment. And then secondly, obviously the most important thing for me is regarding our employees, in helping our employees respond to these changes for our members and adapting the business processes and business model to support our members. And then, of course, fundamentally, it is about how do we ensure that the safety and well-being of our employees themselves is paramount in how we manage our business going forward in this environment.
And what would you say has been the single biggest challenge that you've had to face as an organisation?
This is an interesting question. I'm extremely proud of how our organisation and employees have responded. No matter how big the challenge, we've actually worked to overcome these challenges as a team with that clear focus on our members. Therefore, really, when I think about this question, the biggest challenge has been how do we ensure the well-being of our people as we implement the working from home arrangements that we've done across 1,100 staff? How do we check in on them as they adapt to this? How do we support them? How do we identify mental health issues and work to support those employees who are feeling those impacts through these times? And equally important is how do we educate our leaders on leading in this new way of working.
And what about personally, Steve? Where have you felt most stretched as a leader?
Look, simply in balancing all of the demands of the role, I think has been what's caused the most stretch for me. Whilst working from home and with a wife who's working from home and two children, school-age children who have been here as well. So adapting myself to this new way of working, when you balance that with all of those extra demands of the role. Prior to the pandemic really hitting, I was extremely busy anyway in focusing on two mergers, one with a deadline of the 1st of July, overseeing a property move in Sydney to bring 600 employees together in one CBD location from mid-July, and all of the usual things that we have on. So when you overlay all of the people impacts that have arisen from COVID-19, together with having to adapt to the majority of these interactions being through technology, which increases the demands of the day, my biggest challenge really has been in balancing and prioritising so I personally can be as impactful as I can And all of that whilst needing to lead such a fantastic team in the people and workplace team who are obviously learning to adapt to this environment too.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you had to develop or draw on any particular skills to help yourself navigate through this situation?
In times of uncertainty like we're all in right now, decisions can often be delayed due to a perceived lack of information. And so, but at the end of the day, leaders have to make decisions. And so the ability just to make calls and make decisions is what's really paramount at this time. We're all human, so people I find will forgive you if you make a decision that might not quite be right in the long term or might be incomplete, but not making decisions, I believe, is unforgivable.
And how are your fellow executives coping? What are they leaning on you for support around and with?
I'm very proud of our executive team. I always have been. So I think this time has really demonstrated that we really are a team that comes together no matter what our job titles are. I also try and bring a little bit of humour into our executive interactions. I think that's a really important place to make sure we leave space for. We are getting together more regularly as a team during this time, and so it's important that we release some of the pressure sometimes through having a bit of a laugh, and I always try and make sure I inject a little bit of that. And the question about what they're leaning on me for, I think the main thing that executives lean on me for goes back to probably my earlier point around decision making. When decisions need to be made about how we focus on our people according to our value of care deeply, which is one of our core organisational values, my role when we look at that people arena is really to get their perspectives, agree a way forward with them, but then make the decision with their support and then support them leading our people through this time.
And Steve, has there been any unforeseen upside in this crisis? Any positives or any opportunities that you wouldn't have envisaged?
Look, I think there's lots and lots of upsides of this time, and I think we probably don't know what most of those are yet. And I do think one of the critical things with the organisation is what are those learnings that we're getting out of this time so that we can improve going forward and emerge stronger. Capturing all of those upsides are really important. I think fundamentally one of the key upsides has been for us how this time has demonstrated the strength of our culture and our emphasis on our people and on strong leadership at this time as well, and the importance of leadership in navigating both our business and our people on behalf of our members. It's also demonstrated the strength of our fund. I think at the end of the day, we feel we're in a strong position and that there will be many opportunities in the future that we will be in a great position to maximise. And I think if I was thinking about this question at a practical level, I think one of the opportunities that has been very evident is how we've adapted to using technology to connect with all of our leaders and employees. We were lucky to have just commenced the deployment of Microsoft Teams completely coincidentally just before the crisis really having an impact. And this has been an unbelievable medium for meetings, town halls, leadership forums, and it has broken down many of the geographic barriers because we are across a number of locations that had existed when we were using the more traditional methods of communication prior to this. And I don't think anyone would have predicted that this will now fundamentally change the way we communicate and engage with our people into the future.
And what's been the most surprising element about leading through this crisis for you, Steve?
I shouldn't be that surprised, really, when I consider the culture of First State and what its purpose is and how strong that purpose is for us as an organisation. But I still think every day I am continually blown away by how our people have adapted to this environment, which is a fundamentally different working environment than what we were in only 2 months ago, and then rallied around each other and taken the initiative to keep focused on running our business to support our members. And it has really demonstrated fundamentally that leadership comes from all levels of the organisation.
And now hindsight is a wonderful gift. Is there anything you wish you knew 6 months ago?
Everything that was going to occur in the next 6 months, Matt, would have been fantastic. But in terms of preparedness for what was going to happen, I think again at a quite a practical level, ensuring that we had both technology, hardware, and software ready for such a fundamental change in how we run our business would have been something that would have taken a lot of pain away. And who would have predicted this was going to happen? So it's really very aspirational. But our technology team have done an unbelievable job in supporting our teams in working from home. And it would have been nice to be a little bit more prepared for this so that we didn't put so much stress on that team when we had to respond so quickly, particularly because technology in this way of working is so centralised to how the business is run. And obviously, Matt, selfishly, I would have loved to have known that horse racing was going to continue. So the names of all the winners at Randwick this weekend would be remarkably beneficial for me personally. Thank you.
Brilliant. What about your own team? How are you keeping them motivated?
Oh, look, in reality, they've done a great job at motivating themselves. They have been very respectful of the pressures on me at this time that I mentioned earlier with balancing BAU, the strategic project that I'm involved in, and then equally helping the executive navigate this amazing time that we seem to be going through. And so I try and remain connected with my broader team through my leaders, and they're really critical to me to make sure that I'm making sure that messages are passed through and we're leading through those critical people who've been fundamentally unbelievable in both supporting me and leading those teams. And then with the broader team, I also really just trying to join in some of the more social activities that the team are organising. And thankfully, there's quite a few of those. I really try and make sure that Friday at 4 o'clock is an event I join, always on Microsoft Teams, where we have quarantini and time to walk around and sit around and have a chat about what's gone on during the week, personally and professionally, with a beer in a hand.
Fantastic. And what about your own well-being? How are you keeping sane?
Look, I would love to answer this question with something aspirational that others could aspire to follow, but I think realistically, in honesty, my well-being has probably been the one thing that has suffered a little bit in trying to balance all of the objectives that we've got to try and navigate over this time. I try and make sure I'm taking the dog for a walk. I'm trying to make sure I'm turning the laptop off. But I also have a wife who's working from home, who sits at the same dining table that I do when we're logged on. Got 2 school-aged children, and the job, as I say, has a lot going on in it. So it's something that is front of mind to me. It does get neglected a little bit because of what's going on, and is definitely something I can improve on. And it's hopefully going to be a great key learning for me as I navigate personally this situation and emerge stronger because of it.
You touched on some of the learnings from this crisis previously, but what do you think will be the biggest impacts for HR? Do you think this crisis will change not only HR practices moving forward, but do you think it will change, more broadly the way that people work?
I think business will emerge fundamentally different, and big businesses that don't think they are going to come out of this fundamentally different are probably not going to succeed. I think for HR, this has been a great example, a great opportunity to really show the value of HR to inform business decisions, because the crisis has been a real mix of people impacts and business impact together. And so I hope that HR teams and leaders are truly leveraging this time to contribute to those discussions and really add value to a business. So I think the learning for HR is never waste a good crisis and make sure you're getting in there and helping businesses navigate. And I think when you look at business changes, they will be wide and varied and will be dependent on sectors and how we emerge. But I think one of the fundamental changes to businesses, the inevitable changes, will be about how do we truly encourage and manage a flexible workforce now. I think that there's been so many learnings from businesses that flexible workforces can actually be more productive. And how do we actually embed that into a way that we manage a workforce going forward? And that will mean that leadership skills, empowerment through technology, leveraging commercial benefits. So it's not just for the benefit of individuals, it's actually for the benefit of the organisation. And I think all of those will see key changes on how businesses survive and succeed.
And just this week, Steve, we're obviously starting now to see some easings of the lockdown restrictions. But where are you at First State Super in terms of getting people back to work? What's happening there?
Yeah, we've had the majority of our 1,100 people working from home across predominantly New South Wales and Victoria for a number of weeks now, trying to work out kind of how restrictions are going to be eased, and how you manage those is a challenge. But as you're seeing the federal government start talking about easing some of the baseline restrictions, and so we're thinking about that. There are pockets that have been identified that just are more productive when they're together in the office, or individuals, naturally, we're all different, who are more productive when they're in a location away from their home. And so what we've kind of made a decision is we'd like to trial how we come back to work with recognising all the social distancing and gathering restrictions. Over the next few weeks, we'll be encouraging a proportion of our staff to start coming back to the main workplaces in a way that, and we'll be making sure the workplaces are as safe as possibly can be, so that as restrictions then get more broadly eased over the next weeks and months, we're in a position to have trialed some of that, understood what can work, what can't work, how we work within our buildings, so that we can actually accelerate that when those restrictions are eased.
And a final question for you, Steve. From a personal perspective, what are you most looking forward to doing or seeing once we finally do emerge out of the other end of this crisis?
Look, it's relatively basic for me. I think, Matt, it's seeing some mates for a beer down the pub would be a lovely goal to aspire to. And at a family level, I think we're all going to need to, at some point, aim to get on a plane for a holiday. And I am really looking forward to being able to do that at some time in the future.
Fantastic, brilliant. Hey, Stephen, that's all the questions. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been really insightful and really, really interesting to hear about how you there at First State Super have addressed this crisis and how you're leading through it. So wonderful, really great to catch up with you, and really very much appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
No problem. Thanks for the opportunity, man.